Can you stay for just one night? Lonely CEO had everything but spent Christmas alone, until she asked. She stood in the doorway of her penthouse, city lights glittering behind her like trophies she no longer cared about, and asked the question so softly it almost disappeared into the cold December air. Can you stay for just one night? If you've ever felt surrounded by success yet painfully alone, stay with this story till the very end, because what happens next might change how you see love, family, and the meaning of Christmas. And before we begin, if stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring you more stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Isabella Moore was the kind of woman people admired from a distance. At 39, she was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. Her face appeared on magazine covers, her speeches went viral, and her net worth was discussed more often than her feelings, mostly because no one ever asked about them. She lived in a glass and steel penthouse high above the city, where silence echoed louder than traffic below. Every corner of her home was designed by professionals, yet none of it felt lived in. No crooked picture frames. No fingerprints on the windows. No laughter trapped in the walls. Christmas Eve arrived quietly for Isabella. No frantic grocery runs, no family group chats, no arguments over who burned the turkey last year. Just a perfectly scheduled day that ended with a perfectly empty evening. She poured herself a glass of wine she barely tasted and stared at the massive Christmas tree standing in the corner, beautiful, expensive, and utterly meaningless without someone to share it with. Years ago, she had promised herself she'd never need anyone. After her parents died in a car accident when she was in college, and after a fiancé walked away saying he couldn't compete with her ambition, Isabella learned to replace warmth with achievement. Every promotion, every deal, every milestone became a brick in the wall she built around her heart. It kept the pain out, but it also kept everything else away. Downstairs, in the lobby of the building, Daniel Reyes adjusted his worn jacket and checked the time. He was the overnight maintenance supervisor, a job that paid the bills but left little room for anything else. Christmas meant double shifts, not presents. He had a 10-year-old daughter, Sophia, staying with her grandmother for the holidays because Daniel couldn't afford to take time off. He told himself it was just one more sacrifice in a lifetime of them. Daniel had worked in the building for years, fixing leaks, replacing lights, keeping everything running smoothly so people like Isabella never had to think about it. They'd exchanged polite nods before, nothing more. She barely noticed him, until the night the elevator broke down. It happened just after 9 p.m. Isabella stepped into the elevator, lost in thought, when it jolted and stopped between floors. Panic clawed at her chest. She pressed the emergency button, her voice sharper than she intended as she called for help. Within minutes, Daniel was there, calm and steady, talking her through her breathing while he worked on the controls. "You're safe," he said through the metal door. "I've got you." Something about his voice, unrushed, certain, made her believe him. When the doors finally opened, she let out a shaky laugh she hadn't heard from herself in years. She thanked him, genuinely this time, and for a brief moment their eyes met. He saw exhaustion behind her confidence. She saw kindness behind his tired smile. They parted ways, but the silence of her apartment felt heavier than ever. She tried distracting herself with emails, with news, with anything, but her mind kept returning to the calm in his voice, to the way he treated her like a person instead of a title. An hour later, she found herself back in the elevator, heart pounding for a reason she didn't fully understand. She went down to the lobby, where Daniel was finishing paperwork, clearly surprised to see her again. "Everything okay, ma'am?" he asked. Isabella hesitated. She'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, but this felt terrifying. "I know this is strange," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but, would you like to come upstairs for a cup of coffee?" Daniel blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. He thought of Sophia, of the quiet night waiting for him in his small apartment, of how lonely Christmas felt every year. "Just coffee," he said carefully. They sat across from each other at the massive dining table meant for 12. The coffee steamed between them, and conversation flowed awkwardly at first, small talk about work, about the weather. But slowly, walls began to crack. Isabella spoke about her parents, about how success had cost her friendships she never replaced. Daniel talked about Sophia, about how he worked nights so she could have better days. When midnight neared, Daniel stood to leave, not wanting to overstay his welcome. That's when Isabella's voice broke the silence. Can you stay for just one night? The question hung heavy in the air. She wasn't asking for romance or obligation, just company. Just proof that she didn't have to be alone on Christmas. Daniel saw the vulnerability she rarely allowed anyone to see. He thought of Sophia again, of the lessons he wanted to teach her about kindness and showing up for others. Slowly, he nodded. One night, he said,